Everybody got the review pulled up? Okay. I took the assignment. I changed it to not graded, just like I told you guys I would. I got about 17 emails last night. You didn't change it yet. I told you guys I would. So everybody can relax. But my urgency, or I wanted you guys to have a sense of urgency to do the review. So you guys actually practiced it. I know some of you looked at this stuff and you're like, well, I don't remember how to do this. It's not going to just come back to you the night before the midterm. On the midterm, guys, this is part one of the review. I'm going to get through as much as I can, and over the next few days we'll do it. But you're going to have 35 multiple choice questions. All right, 35 multiple choice, and then we'll have 15 free response. 35 multiple choice, 15 free response. That's 50 questions. How many chapters have we done? We just started 5, so we've done 4 full chapters, right? I did my best, Ms. Carver and I did our best to separate each chapter has about between 10 and 12 questions, something like that. It's not heavy on one thing and or light on another. We really tried to make it a mixture of everything we've done. So this is just a guideline. This is not everything you might see. You guys need to go back to your quarter 1 and 2 quizzes and tests. I'll give you anything I have still. I'll give it back to you today. But you guys need to go back and just review some stuff. I'm going to work out all of these problems. I'm going to post the videos. And then on the actual review day, which would be Thursday, if you guys have any additional questions. No, what is this period? Yeah, so Thursday. Any additional questions, just come in and say, hey, I was looking over this. I don't know how to do this. That sort of thing, all right? So if you're looking at something like number 1, it says evaluate the indicated function. Here's the 2 functions. What are we doing with those 2 functions? You're subtracting them, all right? When you subtract them, they then want you to plug in what for your x value? 4t. All right, so there's a variety of ways to do this. You can subtract them first, then plug in. You can plug in and then subtract them. I would say, okay, here's my f function, which is x squared plus 2. Minus my g function, x minus 3. Why is it important that everything's in parentheses? What do I have to do with that negative sign? You have to distribute it. I guarantee you if this is a multiple choice question, one of the answers is exactly what you would have done without distributing. So just pay attention to things. So this is x squared plus 2 minus x plus 3. Everybody with me? So what can we combine? The 2 and the 3. So I have x squared minus x plus 5. Now, all that is the f function minus the g. Now you need to take 4t and plug it in for every x value you see. So I'm going to replace x here with 4t, and then that's squared. Minus, I'm going to replace the x and put a 4t, and then I have plus 5. What do you guys need to remember to do with this too? It goes to the 4 and to the t, correct? What is 4 squared? 16t squared minus 4t plus 5. Somebody asked me yesterday, now do we factor it? No, guys. All it says to do is evaluate. They wanted you to subtract f minus g and then plug in 4t. All right, number 2 is a composition. It's not a combination. Combination is when you just put them together. Composition means one of the other. So this is saying f of g, and then tell me the domain. F of g. How do we do that, guys? This is f of g of x. They want me to take the g value and plug it in where? Into the f. So I'm going to take the g value and plug it into the f. So I say, okay, I have the square root of, instead of x, I'm plugging in x to the 5th, right? Plus 2. That's it. That's all we can do now. So now we say, well, wait a second. What's the domain? Do I have any domain restrictions? Yes or no? Anybody? Okay, what's the problem? We have a variable where? Underneath a square root, right? So I have to take the square root and set it greater than or equal to what? Greater than or equal to 0. So how do I do this? I'm going to square both sides. So I have x to the 5th plus 2 greater than or equal to 0. Now what? X to the 5th has to be greater than or equal to negative 2. And now what? Take the what? Take the 5th root. Can you guys take the 5th root of a negative number? Can you take the 5th root of a negative number, guys? Yes. So your domain has to be what? What does this sign say? Greater than or equal to. So your x values need to be greater than or equal to the 5th root of negative 2. Got to be bigger than. How come you can take there's a negative underneath the radical. How is that okay? Because what kind of a root do you have? An odd one, all right? Hopefully you guys just aren't awake right now and you're not looking at this like I have no idea, because that's not good. All right, if we're going to find the inverse algebraically, this is y, correct? What do we do with x and y when we're finding the inverse? We switch them. So I say x equals the square root of 2y plus 6. And now we solve. So I subtract 6 from both sides. So I have x minus 6 equals the square root of 2y. How do I get rid of that square root? I square both sides. Good. Guys, look, I'm squaring the whole thing, right? So I'm going to scoot over here. So I have 2y equals x minus 6 squared. And then what's the last thing? Divide by 2. Good. Divide by 2. You guys do not have to multiply out x minus 6 quantity squared. You can just leave it. So I would write my answer as f negative 1 of x equals x minus 6 squared over 2. You cannot simplify the 6 and the 2 because it is stuck. That 6 is stuck with x. But when you're finding the inverse, you just switch x and y, excuse me, and then solve. If you guys don't have this done already, I'd kind of watch, pay attention to what I'm doing, and then maybe tonight go back and follow along and write it all down. I wouldn't try and write it all down right now. All right, odd, even, neither. How do you guys determine if something's odd, even, or neither? What do we look at first? Highest exponent. All right, this happens to be a cube root. What kind of a number is cubed root? Odd, all right? So my two options are either odd or neither. Anybody remember how to do this? What do we plug in? Negative 2 and positive 2. Negative 10, positive 10, whatever. Any number and its exact opposite's got to be greater than 1. If I think that this is an odd function, what are the answers going to be of each other? Opposites, all right? They have to be exact opposites. So if I plug in negative 2, I have the cube root of negative 2 minus 6. So the cube root of negative 8. What number times itself 3 times gives me negative 8? Negative 2, okay. So now I'm going to move over here and I'll plug in positive 2. So I have the cube root of 2 minus 6, cube root of 4. Does anybody know what the cube root of 4 is? Sorry, this is negative. Anybody know what the cube root of negative 4 is? Off the top of your head? No. Is it negative 2? No. So what's your answer here? Neither. Don't get stuck on, oh, I don't know what that value is. It doesn't matter. It's the relationship between the two answers. If this function had the highest exponent that was an even number, and I thought this was an even function, what would my answers need to be of each other? If it's even. If it's even, they have to be the exact same. Good. All right, another inverse one. That means this is y. So what do we do with x and y? We switch them. So x equals y to the 7th minus 6. Add 6 to both sides. Yeah? So I'm going to put this over here. Y to the 7th equals x plus 6. Now what? Take the 7th root. If that was an even number, 6th root, 4th root, square root, what would go in front of my answer? Plus or minus, good, Jeremy. But it's not, so it's fine. So y equals the 7th root of x plus 6. What's the correct way to write that? F negative 1. You could put y of negative 1 if you want to, but just make sure there's that little indication that says, hey, I'm an inverse. If this is a multiple choice question, Make sure you pick the one that has inverse notation. If it's a free response, make sure you answer it correctly. Moving along. Find the domain. Ooh, this is where we got to remember how to do this. Got to remember how to do this. What is the problem in A? What's the issue? There's a variable where? In the denominator. This is a problem when you have a variable in the denominator. So what do? You set it equal or not equal, however you want to say it, to 0. So I'm going to move this over. I get x squared equals -1. Take the square root. So x cannot be what? Plus minus. What's the square root of -1? No. The square root of -1. I. Is that a real number? So do we have any domain restrictions here? No, your domain is all real numbers. You can use anything, because what's going to happen, guys, if I plug in a negative number in my denominator for x, what's going to happen? It's going to become what kind of a number? Positive, and I'm adding 1 to it, so it'll never be 0. If I plug in a positive number and I square it and I add 1 to it, it'll never be 0. If I plug in 0, square it, and add 1 to it, it'll never be 0. So you don't have any domain restrictions here. If it was a minus, then you would. What's the problem with B? There's a what? A variable where? Is it in a denominator? Does that say 1 over x squared? No, it's just underneath a radical. So that means that has to be greater than or equal to 0. If it was in a denominator under a radical, it would just be greater than. So we're going to square both sides. We get x squared minus 16 greater than or equal to 0. X squared greater than or equal to 16. Take the square root. You get x has to be greater than or equal to what? Plus or minus 4. And you're like, well, that doesn't really make sense. Whenever you have a squared, guys, and you get a plus or minus in an inequality, that's like a boundary line. Right? So here's -4. Here's +4, and here's 0. We got to figure out where stuff works and where it doesn't. What kind of dots do I have at -4 and 4? Why? Good, because it's or equal to. So let's check stuff. Let's check 0. What happens if I plug 0 into this problem? 0 squared minus 16 is negative. I get negative square root of -16. Is anything in the middle going to work here? Guys, can I use 0? No, so nothing here is going to work. What about if I plug in +5? That's to the right of 4. What's 5 squared? 25 minus 16. Is that a positive number? Yeah, okay, so stuff over here will work. What about if I plug in -5? What's -5 squared? 25 minus 16. Is that a positive number? Yeah, so stuff over here will work. So what is your domain for this problem? What works? -infinity to -4. Does it include -4? Yep. And then what? Union 4 to infinity. Make sure you guys understand if something is included versus not included. If it's included, it's a bracket. If it's not included, it's a parenthesis. All right, let's look at 7. Determine whether lines are parallel, perpendicular, neither. Okay, let's remind ourselves. Parallel lines have same slope. Perpendicular have what? Opposite reciprocal slopes. Reciprocal. And then neither is self-explanatory. So let's find line 1. Okay, this is x, y, x, y. My slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to say -4 minus 0. Since I started off with -4 in the numerator, what do I have to start with in the denominator? So 2 minus 7. What's -4 minus 0? -4 over 2 minus 7 is -5. So what's my slope here? For line 1, it's 4/5. Now I'm going to come over here and do line 2. So x, y, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I have -8 minus 0. So 14 minus 4. What's negative 8 minus 0? Negative 8 over 14 minus 4 is 10. Okay, what happens here with negative 8 and 10? What does that reduce to? Negative 4 over 5. So here's my two slopes. All right, I have two options, or it's neither. Are those two numbers exactly the same? No. Are those two numbers opposite reciprocals of each other? No, so your answer is neither. Don't get fooled with that. Yes, I know that they're opposites, but they're not reciprocals. Yes, I know it's the same number, but they're opposite signs. All right, how do we find x-intercepts, guys? You plug in 0 for what? 0 for y. Find the x-intercepts, zeros, solutions, roots. Same thing, what do? We factor. So look for GCF first. Anything they have in common? Okay, take that 2 out. I'm left with x squared minus 2x minus 8. Still have that 2 out there. Can I factor this now? Are there factors of negative 8? That'll multiply to give me negative 8, add to give me negative 2. Minus 4 and plus 2, good. So 2x minus 4, x plus 2. Agreed? I know that doesn't look like a 2. So I have 2 equals 0. Not true. I have x equals 4. True. X equals negative 2. Good. How do I write intercepts? As ordered pairs. So when I plugged in 0 for y, I got out 4 for x. So negative 2, 0, and 4, 0. Make sure that you have, guys, when you write your intercepts, make sure you pick the answer that has 0 for the y. Just little stuff to be careful of. Find the zeros for number 9. Find the zeros. How do you find the zeros? How do you find the zeros? You factor it. Should you just jump to P over Q since there's 4 terms? No. All right. If there's, first of all, how many zeros should I have here? 3, because there's the highest exponent is 3. But since I have 4 terms, before you just jump to P over Q, let's just see if this factors. It may. If it doesn't, okay, fine. But if it does, then let's factor it. What do they have in common in that first set of parentheses? Okay, take out your x squared, and you're left with x minus 5, right? What can I take out of the second set of parentheses? Negative 4. If that third term is negative, take that negative out. So I'm left here with what? X minus 5. Does this group nicely? Yes. What is my new GCF? X minus 5. I write it one time out in front. You don't have 2 x minus 5s, guys. You have 1 that you took out. Then you're left with x squared minus 4. Can you factor that more? Yep. X plus 2x minus 2. So I have 3 zeros at x equals 5, x equals negative 2, and x equals positive 2. Do I have any multiplicity? No multiplicity. What does multiplicity mean? Yep, I have the same answer more than once. Good. No multiplicity. Good, good, good. All right, this is super easy. Find the slope and y-intercept. What's the equation of a line in slope-intercept form? What does it look like? Y equals what? mx plus b, just in case you forget. So what that means is I have to get y, what? All by itself. So I'm going to add 8x to both sides and subtract 16. You guys agree? So it's going to give me negative 4y equals 8x minus 16. And then I'm going to divide by negative 4, correct? So I have y equals, what's 8 divided by negative 4? Negative 2x. What's negative 16 divided by negative 4? Plus 4. What is my slope? Negative 2. Guys, your slope is negative 2. It is not negative 2x. What is the y-intercept? At 4. You can write it like that since it says y-intercept equals. That's fine if you put 4. If you want to write the ordered pair, that's fine as well. If you were going to sketch the graph, it would cross at 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's a negative. So goes which direction? Downward. So my slope is 2. So 1, 2 over 1. 1, 2 over 1. Goes something like that. If you have any graphing, it'll be super basic, and I will put a coordinate plane. If you have to do it by hand, I'll put it on there so you don't have to draw your own. Questions? We okay? All right, scooting along. You guys are doing great. Number 11. All right, write the quadratic function in vertex form. Lots of questions yesterday on this one. First of all, guys, let's remember what vertex form is. F of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k. What is h and x? Your vertex, good, is h and k. Did I say h and x? Your vertex is your h and k value. Your a is that number in front of x squared. So if I'm given a function in standard form, I have to find what first? What do I have to find? If I'm going to write in vertex form, what do I have to find? The vertex, okay? So x equals negative b over 2a. That's how we find the x part of our vertex. So I have negative 16 over 2 times negative 4. Negative 16 over negative 8 gives me what number? Negative 16 over negative 8 gives me what number? 2, okay? So the x part of my vertex is 2. God bless you. How do I find the y? I plug the x in, okay? So y equals negative 4 times 2 squared plus 16 times 2 minus 3. Negative 4 times 4 plus, what's 16 times 2? Okay. So negative 16 plus 32 minus 3. What's negative 16 plus 32? 16 minus 3 gives me. So my vertex is at 2, 13. Okay, all I did was find the vertex. I did not write the quadratic function in vertex form. What do I do now? F of x equals, well, look back here. What's your a term? Negative 4, parenthesis, x minus what number? 2 squared plus what? There you go. Good job. All right, number 12, find the vertex. How do you find the vertex? How do you find the x part of the vertex? X equals negative b over 2a. So I have negative 4 over 2 times negative 1. Negative 4 over negative 2 gives me 2, okay? So my vertex is at 2, comma. How do I find the y? Good. Now, guys, what do we do first here? Is this negative 2 squared? Where is the negative sign? It's on the outside. That means I square the number, and then the negative goes with it. So it's negative 4 plus 8 plus 11. Work left to right. What is negative 4 plus 8? 4, and 4 plus 11 is 15. So your vertex is at 2, 15. If you had to write this in vertex form, what would your a term be? Negative 1. Good. Good, good, good. All right, write the vertex form of the equation. This is just like, hey, here is a line, and here are some points. Write the equation of the line, right? Your equation of a parabola is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. In this case, they gave you, with the vertex, they gave you h and k, and they gave you an x and a y. So instead of finding the slope like we do in a line, what value are we finding here first? You're finding the a. And then we plug it back in because we already have the vertex. So just be careful where you put numbers. I have 7 equals, I don't know what a is. The x value they gave me is 1 minus my h squared, then minus 8. You guys with me? Yeah? Okay. So 7 equals, what's 1 minus 2? Negative 1, and negative 1 squared is 1. So a minus 8. Now what? Add 8 to both sides. So your a value is 15. So if I'm going to write my function in vertex form, I need my vertex and I need my a value. Do I have both of those things? Yes. So f of x equals a is 15 times x minus 2 squared minus 8. Plug in your vertex. Say it again. If what? Because this 1 is right here. And then you have the rest of the problem minus 8. So I just added it to both sides. All right, this is a good thing to remember. Good thing to go over. How do we find vertical and horizontal asymptotes? Remember our cheat sheet from, this was section 2.6, I can remember it. How do you find the vertical asymptote? Vertical asymptote, good, Mikey. You set the denominator not equal to 0, good. So this is a super basic problem if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, then you guys would, I don't know what to do. If I have a multiple choice, I'm sure all the answers, all the common mistakes will be there. So just make sure you guys know. I'm going to say 5x plus 2 cannot be 0. So I subtract 2 from both sides. 5x cannot be negative 2. Divide by 5. I have a vertical asymptote at where? 2/5. Negative 2/5. X equals negative 2/5. This is my vertical asymptote. Horizontal asymptotes. Anybody remember how to find the You compare something. Yep, you compare the exponents. You compare the numerator degree to the denominator degree. What is the degree, guys, of the numerator? 1. What's the degree of the denominator? 1. What is the relationship between 1 and 1? They're equal to each other. When they are equal, it's the leading coefficient of the numerator over the leading coefficient of the denominator. What is the leading coefficient of the numerator? 3. It's not 12, guys. It's not written in standard form. So your horizontal is going to be at y equals 3/5. You have to compare. Same thing over here. How do you find the vertical asymptote? Denominator, right? So x plus 2 cannot be 0. So your vertical asymptote is at x equals negative 2. That's the boundary line, the vertical line that your function is going to get really, really, really close to, but not touch. Now your horizontal asymptote, you compare the numerator degree to the denominator degree. What is the degree of the numerator? 2. What's the degree of the denominator? 1. Does anybody remember if the numerator degree is greater than? What is it? Your horizontal asymptote is none. Good. All right, how are we doing? This is coming back to some of us a little bit. Some of you are like, got some stuff to look at. All right, let's look at A here. What do you notice about A for 15? Everything's positive and nice and pretty? No, if I have a negative underneath this radical, what is that going to give me? An I. All right, break this down how you want to. If you want to do it in steps, that's fine. I'm going to break this down into 25 times 2 times negative 1, just so I see everything that's underneath. The second one, I'm going to break this down into 4 times 10, right? We break down our perfect squares and non-perfect squares. So what can I take out? The square root of 25 is 5, right? And what's the square root of negative 1? I. All right, so I'm going to multiply. What is 7 times 5i? 35i, and then I have the square root of 2. Over here, what can I take out? 2, right? And 2 times 2 is 4. So I have... Is this my final answer? Yes or no? Why not? It's not written in what? standard form. The real number has to go first. So 4 root 10 plus 35I root 2. It has to be written in A plus BI form. That means your real number is first, the imaginary is second. So if I come over here to B, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Let's simplify as much as we can first before we start combining. What do I need to do with this negative 3 right here? I need to distribute. So I have 4 plus 3I. Okay, fine. I have plus. There's nothing to distribute here, so I could just take it out of the parenthesis. What's a negative 3 times 8? Negative 24. Negative 3 plus 2I is negative 6I, right? Real stays with real. Circle all the real ones. 4, positive 2, negative 24. What's 4 plus 2? 6 minus 24. Negative 18, okay. Now let's look at our imaginaries. 3I minus 4I minus 6I. What's 3I minus 4I? Negative I minus 6I minus 7I. And there you go. Are we written in standard form? Yep, we sure are. All right, I'm going to stop there for today. We'll pick up with 16 tomorrow because it's like a totally new concept. I'm going to try and get 16 through maybe 30, 32, something like that tomorrow, and then we'll finish up on Thursday.